And welcome back into the Extra Point for the first time since spring break here on WEGL 91.1 FM or online at WEGLFM.com. I'm your host, Jared Dillard, and joined today, once again, it's Brooks Childress and Noah Gardner joining us for maybe the second time. I kind of don't keep up for how many times you come on the show, to be quite honest, but it's nice to have you on the show, Noah, and, of course, my old pal, Brooks.
I'm always here. I'm always here. Did you? Yeah, you turned on the mic.
Yeah, I turned on your mic for it. Come on now. Noah, how are you doing today?
His mic's not on.
I'm sorry.
That's it. You're done.
We had to joke with you one time. Okay.
I'm doing great, man. This has to be more than the second time I've been on the show. Back in the day when you guys first started going, I was a part of the choir, and it's great to return to the choir and to be on the Extra Point with you guys. I'm pumped up. Just call me and one.
Call you and one? I will not. I'm gonna stick with Noah if that's okay with you. But of course, spring break come and gone. We're back into the grind of classes. A lot of sports has been happening. Obviously, March Madness was it alluded to his name, madness and heartbreak. If you're an Auburn Tiger
or a Virginia Cavalier
or Virginia Cavalier
Wildcat,
or if you just pick Virginia in your bracket, in general. Brooks,
it hurts.
It hurts for me too.
Listen, I couldn't look at I've got 2 golden retrievers at home. I couldn't look at them without feeling a little bit of anger for 2 days.
Noah, who did you have winning in your bracket again?
I had Virginia winning the whole thing, but
so we're all hurt.
That's besides the point.
Is
I was not hurt with the 16-1 upset. I don't know how you could hurt Brooks after watching history be made on a basketball court.
It was a good feeling. I'm like, what happened? This is great. But then this was probably the best bracket I've ever picked in my life, and they had to ruin it for me. So it was a little hurt.
I don't know if that says more about this year's tournament or if that says more about your bracket picking ability. If this is the best bracket that you've ever picked and your champion's already out after the second day.
It's a fluke. I was doing great. Up until this point, I'd gotten 1, maybe 2 games wrong, and then it just all fell apart.
Up until that point, I had 2 or 3 games wrong, and ever since Virginia lost, my bracket has imploded on itself.
I'm still leading our bracket pool, though.
You are, but I'm 3rd, I think.
Sure, why not?
A resounding second to last. I'll reserve that for myself.
Look, we'll talk about this formula that you concocted in a second.
We don't have to.
But
but we will.
Let's go back to that Virginia UMBC historic night. I had made the joke that because I'm from the state of Virginia, halfway through the game, I said if Virginia loses, I'm going to renounce my statehood and no longer be from Virginia. I'm no longer from Virginia. I'm from Alabama. And it feels good. I can't have that kind of blemish on my record. So
you just disowned, I
disowned the whole state.
You were never born in the state of Virginia?
I disowned the Commonwealth of Virginia. My birth certificate, gone. I feel like it's going to be a problem in the future, but it's gone.
Not going to go anywhere, but...
All right, so that night, Noah, you and I watched the game together. And Brooks, I
feel like we all did because you were on the phone with Brooks at one point.
Brooks, 2 minutes ago when I realized that, I was going to cry, I eventually called you, and you were also in your feelings.
I didn't know what was going on.
And let's just run through that historic Virginia upset. But before that, if you want to call in, you want to talk about Virginia, talk about Auburn and where to go from here, talk about Auburn baseball or Auburn softball, anything in sports, you can call in at 334-844-9345. That's 334-844-9345. UMBC with the thing is, it wasn't even a close game. I think that's probably the most shocking part about it all is that UMBC won by a comfortable 15 to 20 point margin.
I mean, yeah, they did. What kills Virginia is the style that in my opinion, what kills Virginia is the style that they play. It's very slow paced, it's very defensive minded, and it's hard for them to score quickly. And when you had a team like UMBC that was a little bit quicker, they could get down and score. They got up, 1-2 scores. It's hard for a team like Virginia, who's very slow paced, to pick up their pace and that was inevitably their downfall.
My only question to that is, why did it all of a sudden manifest itself in the first round of the NCAA tournament against UMBC when they had only lost 2-3 games all year long? They were ACC tournament champions, regular season champions. I mean, this was one of the best regular seasons that we could possibly see from a team in the ACC with the way that they performed, and they didn't have that problem all year long. Well, I do agree with you that once they got down by like 10 points, that all of a sudden became a problem because Virginia's style of basketball is not indicative of a team that is capable of coming back from a margin like that. But I think that there were much more problems than just the fact that it's their style of play, and that's what had them get bounced out.
It's true. It's funny, the two teams, you guys know I love me some defense, no matter what sport it is. You know, defense wins championships. And the two teams that played great, grinded-out defense, that is Virginia and to some extent, not always, but to some extent Tennessee, they're both gone already.
And UMBC and Loyola Chicago, the two teams that upset those teams respectively, those teams are dangerous offensive teams in their own right. And then UMBC lays an egg offensively against a great defensive team in Kansas State, which is interesting. I want to pose this question to you. Which is more surprising? That UMBC was able to score in the 70s. Did they score like 74 points? I think that was the final score. It was like 74-54 or something like that.
Something like that.
Was it more shocking to you that they beat Virginia by 20 or that they were able to score into the 70s on a defense that was only giving up into the 50s in points allowed per game this whole season?
I think it was a little bit of shock for both. I would say it's more of a surprise that they beat Virginia since, 16 seed being a 1 seed, that's never happened before until now. But it is very, very shocking that they were able to score. You look at 70 points, and usually that's not like look at 70 points in a basketball game, you're like, all right, that's middle of the road score. But that, like you said, that's a lot of points against a team like Virginia. So I think it's pretty shocking on both ends. I'd say the more shocking is beating Virginia outright, because I'd only heard about UMBC in here and there, like when you were playing in NCAA basketball video games when you were growing up. You scroll through like the America East, you see UMBC, and you're like, oh, I know that team from video
game, yeah.
But
it's the team that you scheduled in your non-conference when you were looking to win by 40.
Yeah, and they lost to who was it? They lost to this year, Albany, like 84-30 something this year.
Oh yeah, they got crushed. You wonder how Albany's feeling right now. You know who the real winner is in all the UMBC hype? It's their own Twitter account.
That was a great. I don't know. I was following that all night after someone pointed out on Twitter that they was going they were bomb on Twitter. I went on there. It was great. They were adding Steph Davis all night.
The funny part is for UMBC, that one night that they beat Virginia, for that 24-hour span, they sold more merchandise that night than they had all year.
Their website even crashed.
Not the
athletics page, but the actual university website.
Do you think we'll see a spike in enrollment at UMBC?
No, I'm not an expert on enrolling places.
Well, let's move on to what a lot of us are feeling right now, and that is the Auburn Tigers and their March Madness, I would say run, but it feels more like a skip at this point. It was
more of a stumble.
It was more of a stumble. They stumbled into the tournament. They stumbled through the first round, and then, I don't know what really to call the second round.
They finally fell flat on their face and just laid there.
I think this team's been falling for a while, and they finally hit the bottom. I think that's
so for Auburn was the tipping point Anthony McLemore, and after that it kind of just wasn't there anymore.
I didn't think that the Anthony McLemore injury would have this big of an effect on this team, like to this degree, and I still don't believe that Anthony McLemore's injury is the sole reason for Auburn's collapse at the end of the season. I don't even really want to call it a collapse because they still won the regular season championship. I would be willing to bet, in my mind, they were not a team that I would favor to win the SEC tournament. Even if McLemore was healthy, I could see somebody favoring them, but it was still a wide-open race, I think, at the end of the season, even when McLemore was healthy. It hurt Auburn because they couldn't defend the rim, and they did lose somebody who could stretch out the floor offensively, even with shooting threes, but also being able to score in the rim. I mean, Anthony McLemore was a versatile player, and we saw how good he really was when he wasn't out on the floor for Auburn and what Auburn was dearly missing. But I think Auburn's struggles purely were based in confidence in their three-point shooters because Auburn was not shooting the three well at all following the end of the season, and well, really when they got on that bad slump at the end of the season and then into the SEC tournament. I mean, you look at what they did in the NCAA tournament, shooting threes. I mean, guys like Bryce Brown going 0 for 6.5, that's not a recipe for success, especially when they're volume shooters. Jared Harper never really got up off the floor in his games in terms of scoring, which we're accustomed to watching him being able to score, and he's a volume shooter as well. Jared Harper, I still thought played fine considering he runs the offense. When he was on the floor, Auburn's offense at least had some semblance of an offense. But as far as three-point scoring is concerned, Auburn, I think confidence-wise, was drained at the end of the season.
And one thing that hurt Auburn, not in the second game, but the first game against Charleston, was Jared Harper. You know, he got those 2 quick fouls right there at the beginning, first 2 minutes of the game, and then they sat him for the rest of the half. I think that, you know, if Jared had not gotten those, they would have had a little more convincing win. It wouldn't have been that much better because College of Charleston was obviously a better team than everyone thought. But I think, you know, we talk about how Auburn struggled in the tournament. They, you know, obviously they got crushed by Clemson, and they struggled against College of Charleston. I don't think it would have been as big a struggle had Jared Harper not gotten those 2 fouls early in that game, and Bruce decided to sit him for the rest of the half.
I don't think College of Charleston really played that well in that game. I always had the feeling that it was Auburn not playing well, not shooting the basketball well. Auburn had their best defensive performance of the season in terms of defensive efficiency against College of Charleston. I don't think that it was this. I was nothing about College of Charleston's game. Nothing about that game at all impressed me in the first round. It was just an ugly basketball game that Auburn happened to win because they had better players, and that was it. And so the loss to Clemson, which I know is probably where we're headed, it was expected that Auburn was going to lose to Clemson in my mind. I did not expect a blowout. I thought Auburn would at least put up a better fight than 31-point thrashing. But nonetheless, I think that the way that this season ended is they're ready to move on, and next year could be just as good. It's just hard to pin on what this team's going to look like next season.
And I would say, I think Clemson, I know, you know, I'm not the biggest ACC basketball, you know, not entrepreneur, but
are you selling ACC basketball?
I'm selling ACC basketball. Connoisseur, that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. But
Preaching from the choir.
I didn't really see a Clemson run to the Sweet 16. I thought in my bracket, I thought that they were going to get beat. I thought New Mexico State was a better team than they were, and I thought they were going to beat Clemson that first round, and then it had been Auburn and New Mexico State. But obviously, Clemson's proving us wrong as they've gone to the Elite Eight. Or not Elite. I'm giving them one extra round. They got to play Kansas next.
Yeah, are you throwing out your predictions already, Brooks?
No.
I think Clemson's proof of a team that if they can shoot the basketball well, they're very similar to Auburn, and I think that they're definitely playing with a whole lot more confidence because considering they're still playing. But at the time that the two teams were playing, Clemson obviously was playing with a whole lot more confidence. You look at what Gabe DeVoe was able to do for Clemson and their talented backcourt and how well they were able to shoot the three-point ball. Clemson's playing with a lot of confidence, and they're a picturesque version of a team in this year's tournament that if they're shooting the ball well and they're playing well offensively, you can make a run. And so I'm really personally intrigued by this Kansas-Clemson game. I think it's one of the most intriguing, if not the best, Sweet 16 matchup that we have. Would not shock me if Clemson won. I thought Kansas would have been bounced by now. I expected them to lose in the round of 32 to either NC State or Seton Hall based on defensive alone from those two teams. But here we still stand. Two great offensive teams, two teams that can shoot the three very well in Kansas and Clemson, and it's bound to be a fun one.
It is bound to be a fun one, and a lot of the Sweet 16 games are intriguing. My favorite, it probably will score the lowest when it comes to ratings, but I'm all in on the Nevada-Loyola Chicago game because who doesn't like Sister Jean?
Had that one picked in my bracket, dude. Pumped.
You say you had that one picked. The formula had that one picked.
That's fair. I can't take credit for the triumphs if I'm not taking responsibility for the failures. Second to last.
We'll talk more about those Sweet 16 matchups when we come back from break. And we can also talk some NFL, some NBA, some Major League Baseball. If you didn't hear about Justin Turner breaking his wrist in the pickup game yesterday, we can also talk about that. And if you want to, you can call in at 334-844-9345. That's 334-844-9345. You're listening to the Extra Point here on WEGL 91.1 FM or online at WEGLFM.com.
This is a place where it only takes a second to imagine your future. Grasp a new concept in class. Inspire a child's curiosity. Discover a real-world solution. Seize an unexpected opportunity.
There goes Davis!
This is where you gain the preparation, confidence, and determination to succeed. This is Auburn.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
And welcome back into the Extra Point here on WEGL 91.1 FM or online at WEGLFM.com. Remember, you can always catch us after the show is over on iTunes and on our SoundCloud page, both at WEGL 91.1 FM. And also, if you want to see our just beautiful faces, remember, you can catch us in the video format over on Eagle Eye TV Channel 6 or EagleEyeAuburn.com. Did I cover everything, Brooks?
I think so.
Moving on.
Wait. No, you get the podcast.
Yeah, I did the podcast. Come on now. Moving on. We were going to talk about the Sweet 16. However, let's talk more about some of these games in around the 32 and around the 64 that were intriguing. So, Brooks, I'll let you start it off. Which game do you want to kind of just look back on and kind of evaluate?
I just want to look at Loyola Chicago's run to start with. Like, I don't think I watched any of the Miami game, which is a travesty because I saw the highlights and it was a great game.
It was one of the best games in the tournament thus far.
And then that Chicago-Tennessee game, that was great. That's what I mean, Loyola Chicago, you mentioned it, Sister Jean. You cannot, this is one of those stories that you look, and it's one of the stories that makes March.
It really is. And did you see that they at some point, it was like years ago, they had Sister Jean bobbleheads. I want one.
You can go on eBay.
We'll probably sell them for about $400 now.
But Loyola Chicago, I take pride in the fact that I picked them to go to the Sweet 16.
I didn't.
I'm happy.
I picked them to go and lose to Tennessee, but not beat Tennessee. No, I didn't see that coming.
See, but Jared, you're the type of bracket selector that picks the first round upset and then it burns out. You don't send anybody. You're chalk after round of 32, which is okay. Honestly, your bracket's doing a lot better than my bracket, but that's how you pick it. And although that is true, and you're probably going to predict a higher amount of games correctly, on the flip side, you are going to miss some of the upsets that run deep in the tournament. But on the same note, it's very hard to select which one of those teams are going deep. I'm proud to say that these two teams that are playing each other in the Sweet 16, it's the only two Cinderella runs that I got right up into this point, and that's Loyola Chicago and Nevada, and I'm excited about that game. Two high-flying offenses.
So to clarify, I am tied second in our bracket group.
You're doing great. I gave you that credit. You're doing great.
So
Still first.
I just wanted to feel good about myself right now after the Virginia debacle.
Still first.
And Brooks, you're running at 98%. So
yeah. I told you, this is one of the best brackets I've ever picked. I'm really proud of myself.
I'm proud of you too, Brooks. I really am. But what other areas in the bracket do you want to look at?
I mean, we've already had two number one seeds go down. We obviously talked about the Virginia one. Xavier, I didn't watch any of that game. I don't know. Noah, did you watch any of the Xavier-Florida State game?
I saw bits and pieces. Florida State, obviously extremely athletic. They're not having the kind of year that they had last year when they were a 3 seed, and remember them getting bounced out by Xavier when they went on that magical run. So Florida State getting a little bit of revenge. This Florida State team, though, very athletic, and if they can avoid a poor shooting day and can overcome that, this is a team that you should watch out for. Athleticism can carry you a long way if you can play efficiently on the offensive end.
Talk about a team that's gone a long way. Let's talk about the first four teams. Let's talk about Syracuse and their run that they're making, taking down Arizona State, and then going in and getting a big win over the 6-seeded TCU, a good Big 12 team, and then taking down one of the, I would say, top four favorites to win the championship in Michigan State with a score of 55-53. And now Syracuse is looking to get another big upset when they take on Duke on Friday.
This is reminiscent of that 2015 Final Four run that they made when they were a double-digit seed, had to play in a play-in game. Nobody believed that they should be in the tournament. It's similar to this year. I don't have as big a gripes about them being in this year's field as I did back in 2015, but they proved me wrong in 15 when they made that run, and they're proving people out there this year wrong as well. Would not shock me if they were able to beat Duke. Now, on the other hand, I believe that Duke is going to run away with this year's tournament. I don't believe that there's anybody on the other side of the bracket that can take them, and there's only one team that might give them trouble on this side, or I should say two teams, because I think this game's tricky in itself. That 2-3 zone and just Q's as this double-digit seeded team in the tournament. They've only lost like one game ever in their history, which makes this game, it adds a little bit to it. It adds another factor to it that this team's on a Cinderella run, but I just don't think that there are many teams left that should concern Duke when it's Villanova and Syracuse, and both of them are on their same side, but they may not even have to run into Villanova when it's all said and done.
I think it's a great run by Syracuse. Jim Boeheim knows how to coach in the tournament. He's like Calipari,
I don't see the similarities.
I mean, you get like Kentucky. They didn't have their best year this year. They're not, they didn't have a top flight year. They did win the SEC tournament, but they didn't have the top flight year that Kentucky's used to having, is winning the conference outright and then winning the tournament. And now they're going through March, and they're into the Sweet 16, probably go to the Elite Eight, because they're playing, who do they play next?
Kansas State.
They'll probably beat Kansas State, at least go to the Elite Eight, probably take care of business unless Nevada or Loyola Chicago make another, miraculous victory. But Jim Boeheim, Calipari, it's something about these teams, like blue blood teams, that if they don't do good in the not up to par in the regular season, they turn it on here in the tournament. But this takes me back to a point. I don't think the Michigan State win is that shocking, because if you look at Michigan State, they're really good. They were really good this year. Bridges was really good, but they struggled against Bucknell in the first round.
Kansas struggled against Penn.
I think you could say the same thing about Gonzaga and their struggles with UNC Greensboro, and then turning around and beating a very talented Ohio State team and putting up 90 points.
I'm just saying that I don't think it's a shocking, because you saw the chinks in the armor for Michigan State against Bucknell, and then when Syracuse came in, they were kind of like, okay, we saw what Bucknell was able to do, so we can capitalize on this.
I think if anything, we shouldn't be surprised, because if you look at Izzo's past performance in the tournament, it's not good. Let's not forget what MTSU did as a 15 seed a couple years ago. Or last year, whenever that happened.
It was 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago.
And last year, they were supposed to be, making a good run, and they didn't do that either. So, Izzo has struggled the past 3 seasons in the tournament. So, if you say it like that, then I'm not surprised. But Michigan State should have taken care of Syracuse. But Syracuse, being that program that's, a blue blood, they've been here. They know how to win. They were able to put together a good game plan and take down one of the favorites to win it all. And once you have that, going for you, Duke is just another stepping stone in that matter.
And as they go on and take on Duke...
Duke's more like a boulder instead of a stepping stone, though.
A very big boulder. But as they go on and take on Duke, I remember one of the last games of the regular season that Duke played, which was against Syracuse. I think it was their second last game of the regular season. And just kind of watching Duke play against them and having seen Duke take on the Orange when Duke's defense had reached this new height of defensive efficiency, and Syracuse still stayed in the basketball game because Syracuse is going to be able to slow this down. But if Duke is able to score and score at will, 'Cuse has no chance. because Syracuse will have a hard time offensively against Duke, without a doubt in my mind. Duke is one of the best. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Duke is the best rebounding team in the NCAA tournament left. They are gigantic when you look at Marvin Bagley and Wendell Carter, and those aren't even the first guys that Syracuse. I mean, those are the big guys that Syracuse will have to worry about, but there are more than just that. I mean, Duke is big everywhere, and Cuse has struggled against Michigan State offensively. Duke is a better defensive team than Michigan State in my mind, and so I think that Cuse is going to have a really hard time. They're like Virginia. They're going to have a hard time coming back when they get down, and if Duke gets up to a 10-point lead, watch out. This is a boat race.
I could see Duke winning by more than 15 points against Syracuse.
100%. I think this could be the ugliest win for Duke in the tournament up to this point. Maybe not more ugly than the Iona game, but I definitely think it'll surpass what happened in the Rhode Island game.
I don't know if this is a bold prediction. It's Sweet 16, so I don't know. I think this would be the largest margin of victory out of all the Sweet 16 games. Duke versus Syracuse.
Trying to think of the other ones. I think it's definitely more than Kansas, Clemson, UMBC, or not UMBC.
There's Kansas State, Kentucky.
That one could get.
I for some reason feel like Kansas State's going to be really scrappy in that game. There's going to be a lot of fouls, and Kansas State's going to get to the free throw line a lot.
And does Kentucky cool off offensively? You know, they're a team that's been shooting the basketball really well and been playing very well offensively in this NCAA tournament so far. I don't think I've seen Kentucky score 93 points that often this year.
If Kansas State pulls out the Davidson blueprint that they used against Kentucky in the first round, it may be close.
I think if Villanova can shoot in this Sweet 16 game against West Virginia like they did against Alabama on Saturday, I think Villanova can get a very lopsided win.
Point.
But did you see West Virginia? They know how to shoot, too, because they were dropping dimes.
But they are so hit or miss this year.
It's true.
And a lot of times they rely so heavily on Javon Carter that I'm with Brooks. That Villanova game could get ugly in a hurry.
If Villanova shoots like they did Saturday against Alabama, it could get ugly really quickly.
Especially if West Virginia's press isn't working and they're not turning Nova over, which Nova is a team in this year's field that is as fundamentally sound as they come. They're actually like them and Virginia are like the two most fundamentally sound.
Yeah, I'm about to say
statistically.
the other fundamentally sounded team lost to a 16 seed.
See, but this Villanova team is so much better offensively than Virginia could ever hope to be, just by the way that they play and how fast that they can score. And ask Alabama about that when Michael Bridges was able to score, hit 6 threes in a row to open up the second half. So,
well, we're done talking about the round of 64 and 32. Talk a little bit about Sweet 16. Hey, look, we're going to run through those games right quick when we come back, and then we'll talk about the NFL, and they're getting ready to change up that catch rule. A little bit too late for the Cowboys and Des Bryant, but we'll talk about that when we come back. You listen to the Extra Point here on WEGL 91.1 FM or live at WEGLFM.com.
If you don't fix them, sparks from dragging tow chains could cause a wildfire, and that could be scary. Only you can prevent wildfires.
See on page 4 that the projections need to be tornado next Thursday.
Seriously? Thursday? Can't do that.
This is really inconvenient.
I have yoga that day.
I have no time for this.
So.
I can't do Thursday, but I can do Friday.
Disasters don't plan ahead. You can. Talk to your loved ones about how you're going to be ready in an emergency. Don't wait. Communicate.
And welcome back into the Extra Point here on WEGL 91.1 FM or online at WEGLFM.com. I had to catch my breath for a second. All right, I'm good. I'm good.
During the break.
Yeah, but just some sprints. Gotta keep the legs warmed up, you know what I'm saying?
In case you have to run at any moment.
Hey, you never know these days. You can call into the studio at 334-844-9345. That's 334-844-9345. If you want to talk anything in the sports world, hey, we're up for it. Hey, even English Premier Soccer. Hey, we'll talk about it.
Heck yeah, we will.
How's Stoke doing, Brooks?
Not well. Second from last. We're going to get there, though. We're going to climb out. We're going to avoid relegation. It'll be fine.
You say that, but...
Come on, you Potters.
Here we go. Let's talk about the Sweet 16. Let's go to Thursday. I'm going to go in order by time on Thursday for these games. So, starting first is everybody's favorite game. Loyola Chicago taking on Nevada at 6:07 Central. Nevada is a 1.5-point favorite over Sister Jean.
You know, Sister Jean didn't pick them to make it to the Sweet 16 in her bracket.
No, I thought she picked them to lose in the Sweet 16.
No, I think she picked them to not make it.
No, they made it to the Sweet 16, but they lost.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got my facts wrong then. Thank you for correcting me. That's going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to that. I think this could be the closest game of the Sweet 16. Looking at all the games, I don't know. It's like it's a 1-point favorite. You said. I think it's a pick'em game. I don't know who would win this one.
Well, considering my bracket's just busted at that point in this, Loyola with the win. I believe in the Gryffindors or whatever the scarves they have these days. Harry Potter reference.
I have Loyola, or in my bracket I had Loyola getting to this point, but I had them facing Cincinnati, and I thought Cincinnati was going to win it. I think I just don't. There's you got the magic of the tournament. I just don't know if the magic is still there after the Sweet 16.
Wow. All right. So the next game, number 7 Texas A&M taking on number 3 Michigan. 6:37. That's 30 minutes after the Loyola tip-off. A&M getting a great win over UNC. And I got to say, they got to feel like they're on a roll right now. I think, man, it's hard because Michigan is coming off the Big Ten tournament. Had a great run there. They're looking good. Houston gave them a little bit of a scare. They did. But, man, between A&M and Michigan, I think you got to go A&M. I think A&M's hot. When you beat a team like UNC, who was a 2 seed, when you beat a team like UNC, I just think that you have the momentum at that point.
Before I give my analysis, do you want to go to the phones?
Let's go to the phones.
We've got Chris from Auburn standing by. Hey, Chris.
Hey, guys, why bother with the action in Atlanta this weekend? We all know Kentucky's going to come out of the tournament and go to the Final Four.
You think Kentucky's going all the way, Chris?
I mean, it'll be tough once they get to the Final Four, but, I mean, are you kidding me? Nevada? Loyola?
Don't count out Sister Jean quite yet. Loyola's still there. No, you're right. Kentucky has the easiest.
Spent the whole week just complaining about the top 4 seats in his region, and they go lose. And now let's just go ahead and punch They should just go to San Antonio and wait for whoever else shows up. Come on, guys.
I mean,
tell me you're going to watch that.
Oh, we're going to watch.
We're going to watch. I'm all in on Loyola Chicago. You're right. Kentucky does have the easiest path to the Final Four.
You know who else had a very easy path? Was Virginia. And we see how that turned out.
Yeah, that's also true. So never say never, as Justin Bieber would say.
Well, guys, did you have a good spring break? I missed you last week.
It was good. It was good, Chris. I got on the golf course. It was very relaxing.
You also got a haircut for all our video viewers who can see.
I did.
I obviously didn't get new clothes.
You never do.
No.
Well, guys, I would love an upset. I would love to see Kentucky get bounced this weekend in Atlanta. I just don't see it happening.
Well, you're talking about Kentucky Final Four. Who else you got going to the Final Four, Chris?
Well,
I definitely think Duke's going to lose this weekend.
Well, why do you say that?
Syracuse is a really good team. I think they've got a great, they got good momentum going into this game. And even if they get past Syracuse, I think if Kansas gets past Clemson, I think Kansas can beat Duke.
Well, I think Kansas would be the worry for Duke. Duke already beat Syracuse and Clemson pretty handily.
Well,
so I don't think that should be the issue. It's not a guarantee, but that's like an NBA team that Duke has. Are you kidding me?
Well, speaking of the NBA,
dunking all the time and shooting threes, and they're playing defense, and they're all 7 feet tall.
Speaking of the NBA and 7 feet tall, 6 minutes ago, Texas Mo Bamba will enter the NBA draft. That's just coming in now into our news feeds. And also coming in, Nick Saban shoots down that he's thinking about retirement. Steve Spurrier is saying he thinks he can go into his 70s easily. So,
well, that's a good decision there by Bamba. And people around here just are always looking for something to keep Nick Saban in the headlines. That's a darn shame. But anyway, guys, I love the show. I'll talk to y'all soon.
All right, thanks, Chris.
All right, Chris. All right.
It's good to hear from Chris every once in a while.
It's good to hear from Chris. If you want to call in as well, you can call in at 334-844-9345. We'll talk about anything. I'm still throwing up Premier League soccer.
Yep. Let's go Potters. What we were talking about
A&M Michigan.
A&M Michigan. This is probably one of the most intriguing matchups that I see.
Oh, I should go ahead and give the line. Michigan 2.5. I forgot to say that.
Michigan, they got here. They beat who they beat in the first round. It was Montana. They struggled a little bit early with Montana. Ended up winning pretty handily, 61-47. Then they go against Houston, win on that dramatic buzzer beater 3. A&M, I think A&M's one of the surprises of the tournament. You talk about, everyone talks Loyola, Chicago, Nevada, which is both of those are pretty big upsets and pretty big, teams to talk about. That's surprising here in the tournament. But A&M, out of all the SEC teams that made the tournament, no one really talked about A&M. No one really said, "Hey, A&M can go far in here." And then they beat Providence in a very highly contested game. I enjoyed watching that game. And then they beat North Carolina on Sunday, which who would have thought that they beat North Carolina? I didn't. I was driving the whole time. I didn't get to listen or see the game. But when I got back and I saw that they beat North Carolina, I'm like, wow, I didn't think that would happen because North Carolina's a really good team. Luke May, Joel Berry, all. And when it gets to tournament time and Roy Williams, they turn it on.
They didn't just beat North Carolina. They beat North Carolina.
So I think this is going to be highly contested. I think Michigan's going to come out of there with it, but it's going to be really close. I think Michigan's going to have to win it in the last 30 seconds.
Next game, 8:37 Central Time. Number 9, Kansas State. Number 5, Kentucky. No, first, over-under is 138. So we're looking at like a 70s area, like a 65 to 75 area, because Kentucky is favored by 5.5 points.
I think that's a generous line for Kansas State. If Kansas State doesn't come out shooting...
I don't think anybody has love for Kansas State right now.
I just don't like Kentucky. They obviously, I mentioned earlier, they didn't have the up-to-par year like they usually do, winning the conference and winning the conference tournament. They did win the conference tournament, but I think Kentucky, since the tournaments, hit, they did struggle with Davidson a little bit, but then they took care of business against Buffalo, the supposed maybe Cinderella Buffalo. If Kansas State doesn't come out firing and, hitting over 50% of their shots, I think Kentucky runs away with this game.
We'll have to wait and see. Kevin Knox averaging 15.6 points, 5.3 rebounds. He may be hard to stop, and he may have his breakout game in the tournament.
I wouldn't be shocked if it happened.
And finally, for the Thursday night slate, 9:07 Central Time, 30 minutes after the Kentucky tip, It's number 9 Florida State and the number 4 Gonzaga Bulldogs. Gonzaga 5.5 point favorites. I'm going to go Florida State.
This is another intriguing matchup. Florida State is a team that I think kind of slipped under the radar this year in the ACC. You know, they weren't at the top of the league all year. They were decent. They had a few good wins, but I think what's their record right now?
Hold up, let me go backwards. Florida State is 22-11. That is regular season.
You see, that's not a bad record. I think their team is better than their record says, but I think Gonzaga's a really good team. That's all they've got out there is just basketball. They don't have a football team or anything. That doesn't have anything to do with it. That's just a fun fact. But
are you just rambling right now?
Yes. But I think Gonzaga gets the win here. It's going to be close, though.
Moving on to Friday. The first game up, 6:07 Central Standard Time. Clemson, Kansas. Kansas favorite by 4.5 points. And Kansas has had trouble with Penn, and they've had trouble kind of separating themselves from the pack. The Seton Hall game was better, but the Penn gave everybody a scare right there. And Clemson is hot after that Auburn thrashing. They gotta feel good about themselves right now.
I was actually shocked on Selection Sunday when they gave Kansas a 1 seed. I didn't think they had the season to justify a 1 seed, but obviously the tournament committee saw something that I didn't. I don't know what it was, but I just don't think...
They saw the KU.
They heard Rock Chalk.
Rock Chalk and Jayhawks. There they are.
I didn't think Kansas had an up-to-par year. I didn't think they had a year to deserve a 1 seed. I think a 2 seed at the highest. And Clemson, they're a team, like I said earlier, I didn't pay attention to them most of the year. Obviously, they've gotten hot here in the tournament. I think it's a really good possibility that Clemson can come out and upset Kansas and move on to the Elite Eight if whichever Kansas team shows up at this game. If the Kansas team that we've seen most of the year that struggled, that's lost to Oklahoma State twice, shows up, I think Clemson's got a really good shot.
I think going based on seeding, and I know I picked A&M over Michigan, but I feel like a 5 over a 1 is a bigger upset than a 7 over a 3. So this is my upset game of the week right here, is Clemson-Kansas. Because if Clemson comes out hot like they did, and Kansas just struggles just shooting offensively and turning the ball over, because Clemson knows how to force you to turn the ball over. If Clemson does that, and if they're in the game late, and by in the game I mean within 5 points, with 5 minutes to go, they are so dangerous. You do not want to be within 5 of Clemson when getting down to the wire because the shooting is so precise with them. And I'm not going to pick Clemson. I think Kansas will escape, but it is my game to watch. I'm going to put Kansas on upset alert. If they don't come out and play some good Kansas basketball, if they come out lollygagging, Clemson can upset them. And if they do come out slow, Clemson will upset them. Moving on to the next game, it'll be 20 minutes after the Clemson tip. Number 5, West Virginia. Number 1, Villanova. 5.5 point favorites for the Wildcats. I'm gonna take the Wildcats in this one. West Virginia's gonna shoot well, and I think West Virginia actually will be within 2 to 3 points for a good bit of the game before Villanova starts pulling away. I know we're not having the most. We're not high up on, West Virginia, but I feel like Villanova can get them something.
Like I said earlier, if Villanova comes out shooting like they did in the Alabama game, I think it could get ugly really quick because I don't think West Virginia can keep pace with Villanova. Personally, I think Villanova's the best team left in the tournament right now besides Duke. I think Villanova and Duke are pretty well, compared to each other. I think they match up well with each other. I think Villanova wins this one, and I think it's ugly.
And lastly, the next one up is going to be Syracuse versus Duke, 8:37. Duke, this is the biggest spread, 11.5 points for the Blue Devils.
Syracuse is a good team. They've made this run. It's like we said earlier, it's similar to their run a few years ago when they were double-digit seed and they made it all the way to the Final Four. I just think Duke's the most Villanova may be the best team in the tournament with Duke. I think Duke's the most complete team in the tournament. They've got great, big men. They got Bagley. They got Wendell Carter who can play in the paint. And you've also got the range with Grayson Allen. He can hit a three from almost anywhere around the arc. I just think...
Don't forget Gary Trent Jr. and Duval and all of them.
I think Duke's really good.
They got shooters out there.
I think the 11.5 is very spot on. I think it'll be a very Duke-dominated game.
And finally, 857, number 3, Texas Tech. Number 2, Purdue. Purdue will be without Haas because it looks like his brace that was not cleared for him to play in the last game. I don't think anything will change now. Purdue 1.5-point favorites in that game.
I like the line. I think this is also one of the game that's going to be really close. Texas Tech has played well all year. Purdue has also played really well all year. It was kind of, although the loss of Haas does hurt them a little bit. And I think this is a toss-up game. I think anyone can win this game. And I wouldn't be shocked whoever does.
It's funny. Out of all the 1 and 2 seeds, out of all 8 of those teams, Purdue kind of just been there. We haven't really heard, other than the injury, Purdue's just kind of making their way through. Quietly. There's been no drama around Purdue, except for the injury. I think that, I don't know what that means for them. Is everything fine and dandy over in Purdue?
Seems like it. They've been at the top of the standings all year.
Well, we'll find out when they take on Texas Tech, and we'll find out for the other 16 teams who's going to make it to the Elite Eight. Well, we'll have that for you next week. But for now, we're going to go to quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk the NFL catch rule. You want to call in and talk about that for a quick second? You can call in at 334-844-9345. That's 334-844-9345. Get your stopwatches ready. We'll be back in 1 minute here on WEGL 91.1 FM.
I believe this is a practical world and that I can count only on what I earn. Therefore, I believe in work, hard work.
I believe in education, which gives me the knowledge to work wisely and trains my mind and my hands to work skillfully.
I believe in honesty and truthfulness, without which I cannot win the respect and confidence of my fellow men.
I believe in a sound mind, in a sound body, in a spirit that is not afraid, and in a clean sport that develops these qualities.
I believe in obedience to the law because it protects the rights of all.
I believe in human touch, which cultivates sympathy with my fellow men and mutual helpfulness and brings happiness for all.
I believe in my country because it is a land of freedom and because it is my home, and that I can best serve that country by doing justly, loving mercy, and walking humbly with my God.
And because Auburn men and women believe in these things, I believe in Auburn and love it.
And welcome back into the final minutes of the Extra Point here on WEGL 91.1 FM or online at WEGLFM.com. Soon, in about an hour, you'll be able to catch us on our podcast on SoundCloud and on iTunes at WEGL 91.1 FM. Not only that, you'll be able to catch us on video format over on Eagle Eye TV, Channel 6, and EagleEyeAuburn.com starting tomorrow. So make sure you look out for that because these pretty faces, you got to look at them.
I'm gorgeous.
That's the most unattractive I'm gorgeous I've ever heard of.
How dare you?
All right, let's talk about the NFL catch rule for a quick couple of minutes before we got to skedaddle out of this studio. Troy Vincent, the NFL Executive Vice President of Football Operations, talked to the Washington Post Mark Mask talking about the catch rule. And they are going to eliminate a couple of things. The two biggest ones are listed right here. So slight movement of the ball. It looks like we'll be reversing that, said Troy Vincent. Going to the ground, it looks like that's going to be eliminated. And we'll go back to the old replay standard of reverse the call on the field only when it's indisputable. Those are the two big changes they're making to the NFL catch rule. It's kind of been like a joke this catch rule ever since the Des Bryant fiasco, and then it's kind of transcended into sports. The biggest example being this weekend. See, now we're really getting to the we talk about anything on here. This weekend, Auburn baseball and Auburn softball, almost within the same 20-minute span. JSG's in center field for Auburn baseball, and then Morgan Podany left field for Auburn softball. Both made diving catches, and both announcers for both games joked that may have not been a catch in the NFL. It's transcended sports. That's how bad the catch rule has gotten.
I mean, I think the rule change is always good most of the time. Sometimes rule changes are like, why would you change that rule? That's ridiculous. I think this is good for the NFL, making clear what's a catch, what's not, trying to make a little more clear what's a catch, what's not a catch, make it indisputable. Now, I say it's a good thing until someone, everyone says, oh, it's a good thing you're, trying to clarify that, until someone's team is affected by that, and they, it's a game-winning touchdown. You're like, no, the ball moved a little bit. And it's like, it's not indisputable. I'm sorry. And then everyone goes up in arms again. It's like, how can you say that?
Well, here's the thing.
They can't win. You as an official, you can't win.
If there's one thing they need to get right, they need to get the consistency of it right. So the important thing, and they said they're going to go do this, the important thing is just getting all the referees in a room and saying, look, this is it, okay? This is what this is now. As long as we can call it 100% straight up, it is what it is. Let's not be flippy-floppy with it.
But you still got the human element in there.
You still have the human element.
It's like baseball. You can say, hey, the strike zone is from, here to here, knees to the chest to the batter. Umpire can still interpret it a little bit differently than another umpire.
Yeah, but that's kind of also the charm of baseball, isn't it?
Sometimes.
Sometimes
you get really mad.
Infield fly?
We don't need to bring that up.
All right.
That's not a strike zone issue, though.
Cardinals win. Anyway, with that being said, we're going to end the show right here. Thank you guys for listening. Once again, if you want to catch us in podcast format, you can on SoundCloud and on iTunes at WEGO 91.1 FM. If you want to catch us in video format, you can catch us on Eagle Eye TV, Channel 6, or EagleEyeAuburn.com starting tomorrow. And as always, we'll be here every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Isn't that right, Brooks?
Absolutely. Hey, I just want to remind you.
What?
Spring football's back.
It is.
You know who else is practicing, that means?
Well, who's practicing then?
Minnesota. Minnesota football. Row the boat.
You got to row that boat to success. If you follow that, you'll always lead to where you want to go. Hopefully that leads you right back to us next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Same time, same place. We'll see you next week.
That's a shameless plug right there.
Yeah, it is.